Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church Online. I'm Abhi Janamanchi, one of the ministers serving this congregation, and I welcome you to our worship this morning. Whether you're joining us today for the first time or you've been with us for a lifetime, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you're welcome here. Wherever you're joining us from and however you arrived at our worship time together, you are welcome here. Whatever your beliefs, gender identity and expression, immigration status, or political views, you are welcome here. We are so glad you're joining us today. Thank you for taking a chance and taking the time to worship with us. If you're new with us this morning, please let us know in the live chat so we can welcome you. We also invite you to fill out the newcomer form, which is included in the live chat. And if you've been attending for a while and feel moved to join this wonderful religious community as a member, please reach out to our membership and communications coordinator, Nicole Kazi. Our pastoral visitors are an extension of our ministry team. They are available in the chat today to support you. I have a couple of announcements. Today at Cedar Lane and at River Road from 2 to 4 p.m., please drive through and drop off some non-perishable food items for a special manna food drive. You may also want to pick up a holiday plant or drop off an unwrapped gift for the Beacon House gift drive at the same time. We're excited to share that the second concert of our concert series is today at 4 p.m. Today's performance will feature the Army Chorus singing holiday favorites and also a Q&A session with all the members of the chorus. The concert series, which is a long-standing tradition at Cedar Lane, is made possible entirely by your generous support. Now, today we're not able to ask for donations during the concert, but if you feel so moved, please feel free to give at cedarlane.org/give. Also, on Thursday, December 17th at 7 p.m., our Board of Trustees will be holding a special congregational meeting. Please check the e-news to register. We look forward to seeing you there. As we enter this worship experience of reflection and remembrance, of joys and sorrows, of generosity and compassion, let us be mindful of the land where our beloved church is located. Let us be mindful of the Piscataway, Nacotchtank, or more commonly known as the Anacostia people, who have walked these lands for 1,000 years and more. Let us remember those who were enslaved and worked this land without choice or reward. And let us remember all who have gone before, whose vision, commitment, and labor helped create and sustain this religious community, our spiritual home. In this spirit, we gather. In this spirit, we begin. Let us now take a moment and greet and welcome each other in the live chat.
Deeper than DNA, more fundamental than molecules or quarks, at our living core, we are wholeness and transfiguring love.
We often forget that power becoming lonely or resentful, comparing ourselves to others, acting out our fears rather than living our glory. Occasionally, we rouse from our trance to remember our wholeness.
For a time, we embody unsentimental love. We make efforts to wake others and to remain fully present ourselves. Our lives and our time here together are made sacred by our striving.
For the next 60 minutes and for the rest of our lives, may we be more aware of the spirit of life evolving through and among us. May it be so. Come, let us worship. And as we prepare for worship today, it's important to mention that Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of lights, began at sundown on Thursday and will continue and conclude at sundown on December 18th. On each of the 8 holy days of Hanukkah, the menorah is lit in the synagogue and in homes after nightfall. For the Jewish people, Hanukkah is a time when they restore their inner spiritual temple, kindle the spirit of their families, bask in the glow of the small miracles in their own lives, and rededicate themselves to God and to life. Cedar Lane has a long tradition of kindling the menorah during Hanukkah in spiritual solidarity with our Jewish siblings and Jewish Unitarian Universalists. I invite Lisa and Todd Chernikoff to share the blessings that accompany the lighting of the Hanukkah candles, then light the candles and kindle the chalice.
Good morning. I'm Todd Chernikoff, and my pronouns are he, him.
And I'm Lisa Chernikoff, and my pronouns are she, her.
We are lighting our menorah and chalice in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahalach ner shel Hanukkah. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to kindle the Hanukkah lights.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim l'avotenu b'yamim hahen b'zman hazeh. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who performed miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time. As we read our chalice lighting words, I invite you to share in the chat where you are lighting your chalice from.
We light this chalice as a symbol of our free faith.
We light this chalice to remember the miracles of the oil that burned for 8 days.
We light this chalice to mark the nights of midwinter.
We light this chalice as we wait for the sun to return.
Light one candle for the Maccabee children, with thanks that their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. But light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let what's the commitment to those who have died when we cry out that they've not died in vain? Have we come this far, always believing that justice would somehow prevail? This is the burden, and this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears.
Hi, my name is Andrew,
And my name is Laura.
and our theme this month is stillness.
Let's see what's in our wonder box that reminds us of stillness.
The meditation bowl reminds me of stillness because it helps me calm my mind and body. This helps me find stillness in the midst of all the things going on around me.
When we are still, we can connect with our breath and generate a joyful energy that is rooted in peace and relaxation.
Now, our minister is going to tell us a story about stillness.
Thank you, Andrew and Laura. When I think of stillness, I think of candles, because when I see candles, I feel peaceful and quiet. And it reminds me to take a deep breath. And today, I'm going to tell you a story about a candle that didn't stay still. It moved around a lot. Winter Candle by Jaron Ashford. Nana Clover checked her list. Turkey in the oven, potatoes peeled, napkins folded just so. Candles? How could she have forgotten Thanksgiving at 3C Juniper Court without candles? Unheard of. Down she padded 3 flights of stairs to the super. Candles, Nana C., asked Trev. He opened a drawer and handed her a lumpy stick of wax. It's not pretty, but it'll burn. Nana Clover spread some pine cones and leaves around the frumpy candle. By the time her Thanksgiving guests arrived, the centerpiece glowed. 2 weeks later, 2G was in an uproar. The Havdalah candle's not here, Nat yelled from the closet. In the kitchen, Mom sighed. I forgot to buy a new one. Avi's lip quivered. But the stars will be out soon. Sha, it's not the end of the world, Grandpa told the Danziger children. Avi, go ask a neighbor for a candle. Up Avi clattered and rapped on Nana Clover's door. And down he clumped with a bumpy, drooping candle. Avi's brothers stared. That's not a Havdalah candle, Sam groaned. It's not braided. It only has 1 wick, Nat complained. It's not pretty, agreed Grandpa, but a candle is blessed by what it does, not by how it looks. It'll shine. And shine it did as Mom raised it high. Grandpa said the blessing to end the Sabbath. Avi held his hands to the light. They'd never had a Havdalah candle that burned so bright. 4 mornings later, it was 4D's turn for disaster. It's broken, Kristen wailed. Liv came running. 1, 2, 3, 4 candles on the St. Lucia crown, and the 5th one snapped in two. Our cousins will be here any minute, said Kristen. How can I be St. Lucia with only 4 candles? Liv started to cry. No St. Lucia crown and no special St. Lucia breakfast. Girls, we have plenty of time, Mom reassured them. Kristen, go ask your neighbor for a candle. Down Kristen dashed 2 flights to the Danzigers and came back with the funniest looking candle the girls had ever seen. Everyone will laugh at me, moped Kristen. But nobody laughed, because as Kristen carried in the teapot and the St. Lucia buns, the funny looking candle gleamed as brightly as the Star of Bethlehem. Winter came, snow fell, and presents were exchanged. The new year began, and in 5A, it began with calamity. Jamila's got something in her mouth, Dante hollered, and I don't think it's food. Dad scooped up the baby and stuck his finger in her mouth. A piece of wax, a bit of string. Oh no, Dante howled. Jamila ate the faith candle for the Kinara. Go see if the Ericksons have one, his sister Monet suggested. Down the stairs, Dante plodded and knocked on the door. You're lucky we still have this one, Kristen said. She handed him the bedraggled little candle. But Dante didn't feel lucky. How could they talk about faith with that sorry thing? And it wasn't the right color. But when Dad lit the stubby candle, the flame leaped and danced, inviting the other 6 candles to do the same. A few days later came the biggest snowstorm of the season. Snow blanketed the front steps and made drifts on the windowsills. Then, just after nightfall, the electricity went out. Flashlight beams flickered in a few windows. In 5B, the newest family at Juniper Court huddled together in the dark. Their clothes were still in suitcases, their dishes were still in boxes, and Papa was somewhere in the city with a moving truck full of furniture. How will Papa find us? Nasreen asked. The street lights are out. Papa won't find us, cried Farouk. There's too much snow. Of course he will find us, Mama said. Nasreen, go next door and ask the neighbors for a candle. We'll put it in the window to light Papa's way. Next door, Dante scratched his head. I think there's one left from Kwanzaa, he told Nasreen. He returned with a lump of wax that looked like a fairy tale troll. Nasreen's mother lit the candle and set it on the windowsill. How's Papa going to see one little light in such a big city, Farouk asked. But as they watched, the flame shimmered and grew. It glittered on the falling snowflakes until the dark street seemed spun with stars. Many blocks away, Papa slowly steered the big truck through the snow-covered streets. What did that sign say? Pine Street? Vine Street? But then Papa noticed a glow up ahead. Maybe someone there could give him directions. Papa steered left, then right, then left, closer and closer to the glowing light. Papa turned a corner and gasped. In front of him, 5 stories up, shone a warm, welcoming light. He was home. Papa climbed 3 floors, 4 floors, 5 floors, and then, Papa's here! Nasreen and Farouk flew down the hall and into their father's arms. Come see our new house, Papa, cried Nasreen. And look, everyone else is coming too. The little apartment filled with neighbors. Dante's family brought chairs and a folding table. Nana Clover made a bed out of blankets for Nasreen and Farouk. Trev brought a small heater. The Erickson girls and their mother made sandwiches, and the Danzigers put a pot of soup to warm on the camp stove. Everyone welcomed Nasreen and Farouk and Mama and Papa to their new home. And the gnarled little candle glowed so brightly in the window that when the electricity finally did come back on, no one even noticed. The end.
Thank you so much for sharing that heartwarming story of the winter candle, Dana. I feel like it's just perfect for this time that we're finding ourselves in. A time where we don't seem to have everything that we need or want for our holiday rituals, a time where we are unsettled, where our plans seem to be erupting into chaos, where we're desperately trying to put things away in an unfamiliar space that has become our lives. It's a time when many of us feel like we need a light to guide our loved ones to us, or perhaps we need to set out a light to guide them home or to be guided home. The winter candle also teaches us that we must ask for what we need, whether it's our literal or metaphorical neighbors that we ask this of, because we can find blessings in unexpected spaces and places. When we ask for help, we invite the warm glow of comunidad or community to bless us all. Recognizing that even in the most wonderful and easy of years, the holidays are hard for many of us. I reached out to ask all of you about the questions that might be on your heart, and also the wisdom that was keeping your heart light lit, so that we might engage in both asking for the metaphorical candle and also passing the light to each other. Because by asking, sharing, and exchanging together, we strengthen our spirits and community. So I want to thank everyone who answered this call and took a risk at a risky time to be vulnerable. And I want you to know to feel free to share in the chat throughout our time together today if there is a question on your heart or a piece of wisdom that you'd like to share about what's keeping your heart light lit. The first question I received came from a member who wanted to know how to navigate a very difficult relationship with family members that voted for someone whose politics and policies have directly harmed her in the past and are even harming her now. These relatives also chastise her and even name call because she supports different politics and candidates than them. I am seeing this all over Facebook. I'm hearing it from so many people because our country is incredibly polarized right now. False media campaigns and political campaigns are heightening this divide, stoking fears, and dehumanizing other political parties. This makes engaging with loved ones around these questions even more charged and difficult than ever because we're already in this state of alert. And before we go any further down the road to speaking to this question, I want to say that while the struggle is happening in many families right now, in some families there is a long history of abuse. And in others, this type of strife is new and the relationship is otherwise healthy. And while I believe our covenantal faith calls us to work through challenges in relationships through relational work, it's also important to name that staying in abusive relationships is not required to do covenantal work. Sometimes a covenant comes in the form of working with a trained therapist or a group of friends that can help in a discernment process and be supportive as we work through what is triggering us in these relationships and learn to engage with others who might be charged without feeling hooked in or reactive ourselves. And I know I mentioned a therapist, and I want to say this loud and clear also. We are in one of the most challenging times in history, and I recommend for pretty much everyone to have a therapist that's working with you regularly through this time for extra support, because we are encountering things that we have never in our lifetimes encountered before. And extra support is important and can keep us healthy in the uncertain times ahead. Back to our question. If you're in a family where the relationship is otherwise healthy, again, still consider engaging with a friend, a pastor, a therapist, or a small group as you work through shifting this relationship with family and friends. And I also want to point to the November 15th service where Dana Edwards and I shared some resources from Parker Palmer's book, Healing the Heart of Democracy, which can aid in this process. And I'm going to quickly recap Parker Palmer's work, which includes 5 habits of the heart that you're invited to cultivate. The first is an understanding that we are in this together. This habit points to the interdependence that is countercultural to the call of rampant individualism in our society. This habit is a call to covenant. The second habit is an appreciation of the value of otherness. And Palmer says that it's true that we're all in this together. It's also equally true that we spend most of our time thinking in terms of us and them, which is one of the many limitations of the human mind. He goes on to say that us and them doesn't have to mean us versus them. Instead, he calls us to the ancient tradition of hospitality to the stranger, invites us to hold a larger truth that, he says, hospitality, rightly understood, is premised on the notion that the stranger has much to teach us. The third habit is an ability to hold tension in life-giving ways. In this habit, Palmer calls us to embrace the contradictions that we find in our lives, in our hearts, and in our society and relationships. He calls us to allow these tensions to expand our heart. And this habit reminds me of a story that one of my mentors, Mary Morrissey, told me about an interaction she had with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, where she asked him how he was able to hold the Chinese government in his heart with compassion when they have caused so much suffering for him and for Tibet. And after breathing for a moment and the emotions moving through him, he said that the Chinese government are his sacred friends. And he said that our friends are very easy to love, but our sacred friends, they cause our hearts to expand. So he was holding the tension and allowing the tension to cause his heart to expand. The fourth habit is a sense of personal voice and agency. And Palmer states this habit is about cultivating insight and energy to give rise to new life as we speak out and act out our own version of truth while checking and correcting it against the truth of others. This is really important because I think of this habit resting within our fourth principle, which is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And what Palmer emphasizes here is the importance of being an accountable relationship. And we miss this sometimes as Unitarian Universalists. We cannot be in covenant. We cannot engage in this free search for truth and meaning without also being in accountable relationship. Accountable relationship is what reminds us that we are in covenant and we are interdependent. The fifth habit is a capacity to create community. Palmer states, the steady companionship of 2 or 3 kindred spirits can help us find the courage we need to speak and act as citizens. And whether you come to Sunday service or work on the grounds as part of the ground teams, participate in the hiking group, the lunch bunch, Soul Matter sharing circle, or come regularly to coffee hour, or something else where you're connecting more deeply with this community, I remind you that This community called Cedar Lane is dedicated to the work of beloved community and is here to companion you on your journey. Last week's service was important because it focused on compassion. Sheila Marr and Reverend Abi shared crucial spiritual tools I want to point you back to today, because the tools and practices that they shared create a fertile internal spiritual environment that makes it possible to engage and bring healing to all spaces with us wherever we go. The ancient Buddhist practice of Tonglen is something I encourage people to work with daily, especially during times like these, and meditation in all forms, engaging with other practices that cultivate kindness, compassion, and forgiveness are essential in moving through this time and transforming relationships in healing ways. Another person asked how to exist and plan amidst all of the uncertainty of this time and to learn to believe in being enough. And really, there are two questions here. One is related to enoughness and embracing enoughness, which is so hard to do in our society that is both consumerist and steeped in white cis hetero supremacy culture. We're told that nothing is enough. We need more. We always need to be more, to keep striving, etc. I read once that we're bombarded with something like 20,000 messages a day telling us what we should look like, dress like, etc. All of these messages reminding us that we don't measure up. Embracing the truth that we are worthy, loved, lovable, and enough is a lifelong practice and struggle in the best of times. During a pandemic, when every day and sometimes every moment brings more chaos, tossing us off center, holding a sense of enoughness can be even more challenging. And that's where it helps to be in supportive community, to ask for help from that trusted circle when we need those reminders. Again, daily meditation and affirmations can help with building that strong foundation so that when chaos rises again, we have something to breathe into, to hold us as the ground begins to tremble. It's also noteworthy to say that our faith supports our inherent enoughness. Our universalist faith offers that we are born of original blessing. Nothing in life, not even our mistakes, can remove that blessing from us. We are inherently enough, even when we fall short in a task and make mistakes. A hypnotherapist trick I learned that helps me when those thoughts of not enoughness start to rise is when I catch them, I take a breath, say cancel clear, and then replace those thoughts with an affirmation of truth like I am born from original blessing. I am enough. And I invite you to breathe with me in this moment and to think of an old thought that used to come up that maybe told you that you weren't enough or you weren't up for a task, or maybe it's a thought that you felt even before this service started, but when you call it up, take that breath with me and say cancel clear, and take another breath and say to yourself, I am born from original blessing. I am enough. I spent some time in prayer and meditation around these questions that were asked of me this week, and an intersection came to me of the inability to plan in these times and not being enough, and these two biblical verses just kept rising up, coming to my attention. The first is Micah 6:8, where we learn that all the holy requires of us to do is to do justice, love mercy, and to go humbly with our God. And in the Good News translation of Luke 9:23, we learn that Jesus said to his disciples, if you want to come with me, you must forget yourself. Take up your cross every day and follow me. And when I meditated with these two verses, some things bubbled up. And I invite those of you who are struggling with these questions to meditate on these verses as well. For me, I found in them a message that if we want to live meaningful spiritual lives, we have to first forget our human tools, which can sometimes include planning, to set it down and instead take up the burden of uncertainty, of knowing that we are both innately up for the task of loving and being and living in challenging times, and also meant to be humble and stumble as we navigate them. To embrace that nothing extra special is required of us. We were born with all that we need, and our job is to show up and endeavor to act justly, mercifully, and humbly on the journey. However imperfect that might be, our response is enough, and we are to be loved through it by a higher order of thinking or being, or that small circle of fellow journeyers. Planning for everything is harder right now, harder than an act of Congress, I think. How can we be gentle, merciful, and kind with ourselves when plans must constantly change, when the candle on our crown is broken? How can we cultivate resilience and trust in a future we have no illusions of being able to shape? That in and of itself is humbling, and it's not work we can do on our own. Community is essential in supporting us as we take up the work of living spiritually in this time, in all time. So let's reach out to support each other as we lean into the daily work of living in hard times. Let us bear witness to each other's lives with love as we laugh, as we cry, as we live. And as we covenant to do this together, I invite you to join me in the communal act of hymn singing with Jenny Lynn Moyer and Dr. Jasmine Lee in the next hymn, as we allow these questions and the questions of our heart to simmer.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom Our lives are full of wonder and our time is very brief. The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die, and when our lives are done, the memories we share with friends, they will linger on and on, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow, we have the gift to believe that peace within our living is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the ways of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see even the question truly is an answer.
Thank you, Jasmine and Jenny Lynn, for that amazing music ministry. Each Sunday in worship, we take up an offering. It's good to remind ourselves from time to time that the offering is symbolic as well as practical. Through financial pledges, we build our budget to fund our mission and ministries of worship and religious education, pastoral care, and social justice, to pay our professional and religious leaders, and to finance the comfort and beauty of our buildings. We pass the plate during our worship service to embody a community expression of thanks for the blessing of abundance, to visibly bring in the harvest at this most cherished time in the week. Our offering says that the act of giving is essential to our spiritual well-being, as essential as anything we do here on Sunday mornings. This week, we are giving to support Mid-County United Ministries. You may know them as MUM. MUM was originally a choice pantry operating in Wheaton Plaza. About 3 to 4 years ago, they decided to take the pantry to their clients to address transportation and mobility issues. Then the pandemic hit. MUM went from serving 240 people per month to serving 680 to 720 people per month, a nearly 300% increase. With the increase in the number of clients, the need for more food and more volunteers is essential to meeting their needs. Between the generous grants from the government and the generosity of their donors, they've been able to provide a wide range of nutritious foods. The grants and funding from the government will end, but the need will continue. The zip codes that MUM serves have the highest incidences of poverty and food insecurity in Montgomery County, and the second highest in the state. Your financial support is greatly appreciated. There are many ways to give at Cedar Lane. You can give by text, online giving, PayPal, QR code, or by mailing a check to the church. Today's offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you, members of the choir and Jasmine, for that powerful rendition of Rock of Ages. Each time we gather for worship, we set aside time to expand the caring ministry of this, our beloved community. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the heart of this religious community. Within our Cedar Lane community, our hearts are with those whose primary spiritual practice is parenting. We hold in our circle of caring those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions. We hold those who care for family members in ill health and who are experiencing job loss and financial insecurity. This week, we hold in our hearts students of all ages who are finishing papers, taking finals, and ending the semester. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that has to date affected nearly 16 million people and taken the lives of over 280,000 loved ones in the US, and the millions who have lost their jobs and their homes. And we offer our gratitude to all those who have worked tirelessly to develop a vaccine, and to all of our frontline workers who continue to put their lives at risk to serve others. Holding all these joys and sorrows in our hearts, I invite us now to come together in the spirit of prayer, meditation, or reflection. Would you pray with me? Spirit of life, O Holy One, hear our prayer in this season for ourselves and our families and friends who live with the painful memories of loss. All around us are bright lights and messages of cheer, yet in our heart not all is joyful. We remember those whom we have loved and lost. We remember them by their names, their faces, their voices, the memory that binds them to us in this season. We give thanks for them and for their lives. We treasure their memories in this difficult season. O Spirit of compassion, we seek to redeem the pain of loss, all of the losses we face, the loss of relationships, the loss of loved ones, the loss of jobs, the loss of health, the loss of financial security. We pause to seek comfort and care and ask for peace and renewal as we journey through this time. O Spirit of love, we pause to remember each of us. We offer up to you our past, the times of regret and sorrow, the times of mourning, the grief and the pain, the anger and regret, hopelessness and loneliness. We know all these feelings. We name them and live them, for such is the human experience. That love presents us with the possibility of being hurt and with the grief of loss. That forgiveness can begin to heal anger and regret. That being alive is a courageous act in which we are present to all of our emotions. We give thanks for all the support we have known and receive. May we know in this season that we are one, that we are held, that love abides and will not let us go. May it be so. Let us now be in silence together, each adding our own silent prayers and meditations as our hearts lead us.
My heart light got lit last week when I saw this headline in the Washington Post. A FedEx driver saw a boy playing basketball with a rusty hoop. She went to a store and bought him a new one. That was the headline. And it's a story by Kathy Free. And in her story, she captures a lot of feelings and thoughts that are really good for me to keep in mind at this time of year. And they remind me about hope and about compassion. So FedEx driver Aubrey Robinson was driving her normal route in a rural part of Indiana in a mobile home park, and she saw an 11-year-old boy playing basketball outside his house. And she also noticed that the rim of the basket was all bent up and rusty. And she could tell that, she saw him all the time on her route, and she could tell that this was his happy place, as she put it. So she had a day off, which was rare because she was a FedEx driver. And she made a decision to buy the boy a proper hoop. Now, I started at this point to think about that. What if that had been me? If I'd seen this hoop and the boy, I might have said, yikes, he needs a new basketball hoop. And even if I thought about doing something about it, I probably would have said, well, I've got his address. I think I'll go to Amazon, pick some out, and have it shipped. But no, that's not what Aubrey did. She went to Target. She picked out the best hoop she could find. She spent 6 hours at home putting it together. She borrowed a friend's truck to drive it over to the boy's house, and she left a note. Nobody was home, and so she was very happy because she wanted this to be a surprise. So when the boy's mom came home that night and she saw the note and saw the hoop, she burst into tears. And when the boy came home from a weekend with his dad, he cried too. They couldn't believe that somebody would go out of their way like this. Then a couple of days later, Aubrey did something else. She went out and got 180 pounds of sand and brought it over to stabilize the base because she worried that perhaps the thing would tip over onto the boy. Now, a couple of things stood out for me while I was reading this story. I got a big charge out of the thoughts that she shared with the reporter, and there weren't many of them. It was a short article. She said, and quote, "I used to play basketball on an old hoop like that, and I know it can be tricky to get the ball through a bent rim. I wanted that kid to know what it's like to watch a ball roll around a hoop a little before it drops in. I wanted him to have the best hoop I could find and experience that anticipation." So I think this is an example of mudita, which is the ancient Pali word for sympathetic joy. She felt this joy imagining the boy's face when he happened upon his new hoop, at the feeling that he would get when he watched the ball circle the rim and drop, and how great that would feel. And she knew this because she'd felt it herself. She used to play basketball, and she used to play it with a broken rim. So I've heard it said that giving and receiving are actually the same thing. And with this story, I kind of get that. Her joy touched me. And it's because of the trouble she went to and how intentional she was with her gift, including 180 pounds of sand. The boy's mother really said it best. She said, "I had no idea who Aubrey was, but she made me believe in people again." And in this season of giving, I think that gives me a lot of hope. Just knowing that there are little stories like this that are probably happening all over the place, and we don't even know. So my heart is lit one more time, just telling the story to you.
Thank you, choir. It is so good to see your faces and our beloved sanctuary. And I want to thank you, Fran, for sharing that amazing reflection on how you're keeping your heart light lit. I have another question from a Cedar Lane member who asked, how can we keep our heart lights lit when we're away from our favorite people? The grief of not being together with loved ones right now is so sharp and so real. Our rituals and traditions, our touchstones, personally and communally, are being called to change as we navigate life without those rituals in the way they used to happen, and life without hugs from our loved ones. For many of us, this feels incredibly isolating, sad, painful, and even frightening, and despair can fester in us at these times. And it's difficult to be creative in finding ways to be safely together in this time when we're overwhelmed by these emotions and despair. Sometimes it's necessary to reach out, like in the story of the winter candle, and ask a neighbor for help in keeping our heart light lit. Maybe the ask is simply being open to inspiration and finding it, as Fran did, in a news story, or maybe it's on a Pinterest board with great holiday Zoom party ideas. Maybe it's through a phone call where we share our needs and are open to receiving support, or something else. And I hope that you'll share some of what's keeping your heart light lit in the chat or the comments so you can pass your light to others. I want to lift up daily spiritual practices again as an important foundation. Whether it's a stroll in nature, 5 minutes of silence, prayer, or something else, it will help. And it's cumulative. Some answers that I received from Cedar Lane members about the wisdom they've gained during this time includes a person who mentioned that they're finding incredible joy singing and connecting with the choir. Some people have shared that they're trying new things like Zoom dance classes to raise their spirits and cope. Another person is wildly and widely embracing self-care. They quoted Audre Lorde, who said, "Taking care of myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation." Amen. Because that is always true, and most especially in this time. Another person shared that they engage in a practice of being grateful for what they have in these times, and they're working to release the idea of control over anything. Many respondents said that they're leaning in to impermanence. They're finding this grounding and helpful, especially during these times. Still others mentioned how losses in their past and having navigated these challenges of grief and loss before are informing how they move through this time. Community has been mentioned multiple times as essential in keeping our heart lights lit, even if that community and how we engage with it has shifted. Now let's talk about keeping our heart lights lit without a hug, because that's hard. WebMD published an article in June by Jennifer Clapton about how to cope when COVID steals loving touch. In the article, one family created a hug glove out of contractor-grade plastic and a clothesline on Mother's Day so a grandmother could hug her grandchild with some sense of safety. Now, the hug glove isn't CDC approved, and it's definitely not ideal, but it sure is creative. And they mention in the article that the awkwardness that was felt initially gave way to a genuine and wonderful hug, and a video of the hug glove went viral. The article goes on to share other ways of creating the feeling of a hug and the release of similar bonding hormones, including video conferencing and mindfulness activities that include imagining the hug. While not all of these solutions are a replacement for a hug, they can keep our heart lights lit as we navigate missing our loved ones. And I'll show you a hug that my cousin Michelle, who is more like a sister to me than a cousin, She shared with me when I was living far away from her and having a hard time in life. We were on the phone long before video conferencing. And yes, friends, it was a phone that plugged into the wall with a long cord. And she said to me, take your right hand, put it on your left shoulder. Take your left hand, put it on your right shoulder, and squeeze. Because right now I'm hugging you. The staff and worship teams have been working hard to find ways to create a sense of connection this holiday season too. We had a virtual craft day. Thank you, Alice, Camille, Dana Edwards, and Ashley Del Sol for keeping this century-plus tradition alive during COVID. You are miracle workers. Dana and Ashley also created a stuffed animal sleepover and shared stories of the stuffy shenanigans on social media, connecting us all. And in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see faces you haven't seen in a while involved in worship. The virtual choir will be singing rousing songs to turn up your heart light. And we have a special passing the light ritual for Christmas Eve services that will warm your heart and light up our larger community. We're doing everything we can to remind us all that a community is still here, that each of us matters, and that we are holding each other, even if the holding looks different right now. Even when you can't feel the embrace of your favorite people, you can still stoke the flame of your heart light and pass it to others. Maybe smile on a video call, maybe write that card you've been wanting to write, purchase and put together that basketball hoop, make a call or a surprise video conference with a long lost friend. Friends, kindle your light, pass the light, receive the light, and repeat. Amen, and blessed be.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able. Trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today. Love, the guest is on the way.
For us be glad, though earth is bare. Seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and sing today. Love, the rose is on the way. Birds, though ye long have ceased to build, be filled. Even the hour when wings are frozen before fledgling dawn has chosen. People look east and sing today. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. When the light the bowl shall bring, the frosty weather, brightness sun and moon together, and we look gaze and sing today. Love, the star is on the way. Angels announce to beast who come from the east, set every peak and valley humming with the word the Lord is coming. People look east and sing today. Love the Lord.
Thank you, Reverend Abi, Dana Edwards, Fran Flieger, Lisa and Todd Chernikoff, and Andrew and Laura McFarland. Thank you to our musicians, the youth choir, Dr. Jasmine Lee, Rachel Moore, Jenny Lynn Moyer, Kevin Miller, Travis Plager, Dr. Henry Segreezy, our virtual adult choir and youth choir for the beautiful music. And Kevin Miller also created the amazing virtual choir videos. Thank you. And thank you to Pershing's own Army Chorus, who you're going to hear in just a minute. Thank you to our AV team, Michael McCrickard, Mike Morse, Don Woodruff, Barb Thompson, Todd Chernikoff, and Rebecca Nachtrieb. And our membership staff and volunteers and our pastoral volunteers who've all been active in the chat today. Friends, fans, and members of Cedar Lane, thank you for being with us today. And I hope you'll join us with your favorite beverage for a virtual coffee hour after the incredible postlude we have planned for you. And I hope you'll join us next Sunday at 11 a.m. for an amazing spirit experience of holidays and holy days with Reverend Avi Janamanchi, Fred Johnson, Rabbi Danielle Uppin. Cedar Lane Children and Adult Choirs will also join us for a special spirit experience to celebrate the many meanings and moods of the holiday season in song and word, silence and prayer. The URL for the virtual coffee hour will be in the YouTube chat on your screen after the postlude. And now, let us close out our time together with a socially distanced Michelle hug. Right hand on your left shoulder, left hand on your right shoulder. Imagine one of your favorite people and squeeze. Beloveds, you are loved. You are enough. You are made of original blessing. You have something to offer this world, and you are a vital part of this community. Cultivate your light. Pass the light, receive the light, repeat. Amen and blessed be. Let us now rejoice together with this song from the Army Chorus, a teaser to tonight's 4 p.m. concert, and I'll see you at coffee hour for a time of connection. Info on how to support the concerts will be in the chat.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, with the kids jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good cheer. It's the most wonderful time of the year, It's the happiest season. It's the happiest season of all, with greetings and gay happy meetings when friends come to call. It's the happiest season of all. There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting, and caroling out in the snow. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. It's the most wonderful time of the year. There'll be much mistletoeing and hearts will be glowing when loved ones are near. It's the most wonderful time of the year. There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting, and caroling out in the snow. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. Long ago, it's the most wonderful time of the year. There'll be much mistletoeing and hearts will be glowing when loved ones are near. It's the most wonderful, most marvelous, most fabulous, most joyous, most wonderful time of the year, the most wonderful time of the year.